starting at the end here, this is my sedum, autumn joy sedum, that will bloom in about August. And I have it out, usually I have it on the porch, but I have it out so it could get the rain that we had the last couple days. This is my citronella grass, which is now multiple generations old. And I saved multiple stalks last year, but only one survived. So this one plant is an offspring of my older plants. And I believe it's citronella grass because it has these red stalks. And I bought what I thought was lemongrass. It was labeled lemongrass, but it has these red stalks as well. So I'm not actually sure if it's citronella grass or lemongrass. I really wanted one of each. These are my cuttings. So my lavender plant is also several years old and it flowers beautifully. It comes back every year, but I wanted another plant. So I took a cutting and planted it, and it's doing really well, growing nice and big. I don't know if it'll flower this year, but it is growing nicely. And the same for my sage. My sage plant is also very old. This is my original sage plant. It's pretty old. It's starting to get woody. And it also is just like, even though I refresh the soil every year, it just sometimes seems kind of sickly. So I wanted a cutting of that as well. Something I added to my garden this year is purslane. And it's sort of like a succulent. So it has these succulent like leaves, but it's extremely nutritious. It is high in omega 3s. And so it's good to eat. Like, you can just eat it raw, and it's sort of mucilaginous like okra. But also if you feed it to chickens, it makes their eggs really high in omega 3s as well. So I wanted to add this to have to as something that's really nutritious, and it also has these really pretty flowers. I also added rosemary, which I've never really been successful growing rosemary because I always overwater it, but I'm trying really hard to not overwater this one, and it's growing pretty nicely as well. My cone flowers, so this one didn't grow well last year, and I kind of thought that it wasn't going to grow well again, but it has grown really well. But the only thing is they're orange instead of purple, and I bought seeds from Etsy that were supposed to be heirloom echinacea, like the purple kind, that are the medicinal kind, and they're obviously not purple. But I've also never seen other coneflowers this color, so I'm not really sure, but I guess I need to also get a purple coneflower. And then of course my lavender, which the bees really enjoy, and now we have a butterfly or moth really enjoying it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted a second plant, because the bees like the flowers when they open, but of course it's good to use lavender before it opens and flowers. So I wanted one for the bees and one for me. So hopefully I'll have that next year. And then this is my mint, which is several years old at this point, doing really well. My ginger came up pretty well this year. I did multiple small pieces, and I started them really early inside. And now this is just stuff from landscapers, but I'm hoping that it has plenty of time to grow nice and big. And I also have another pot of ginger. Last year I had one big pot, and this year I'm doing several smaller pots. This is my lemon balm. And one of my goals for this year is to actually use the herbs. So I grow them and I think they're beautiful and I like to smell them, but I never actually do anything with them. So that's my goal this year, is to actually use the plants. This is thyme, which has filled out a lot. It was really tiny when I got it. I got the rosemary thyme and this lemongrass / citronella grass from an urban craft fair. This is my original strawberry plant that has spawned these strawberry plants, which are growing strawberries little by little. They kind of stopped producing for a while, but now they're starting to grow again. But now I'm trying to keep up with all these runners, because when they start producing runners, they stop producing fruit. This is my sprouted sweet potato, which I had already taken some of the slips off of it. So I kind of intended on doing more slips, but then I didn't. And now they're kind of like on their last, like I probably need to cut them off. And this is more ginger. Is starting to sprout as well. And these are just some sad little succulents that I just kind of kept limping along, but I wanted to get them to grow bigger. So here's a couple of basil plants that I have. I actually planted 3 basil, so there's one, and there are the other 2, just because also with the bees really like basil, so I wanted to have multiple basil plants. I had oregano last year, but it didn't last the winter, and then I tried to plant seeds and they didn't take, so then I purchased this oregano plant and it's doing really well. It looks like the runners are starting to kind of spread out and hopefully make the plant bigger and fuller. These are my dill plants from last year, which I loved them last year. They came back, but they're kind of scraggly. I'm not really sure what's wrong. I've tried watering them more, I've tried watering them less, but we'll see how they do. These are zinnias, which also grew really well for me last year. I used the same seeds, but the seeds might be getting kind of old because you see I planted them a while ago and they're still barely hanging on. This is chamomile, which I did plant more seeds kind of around the pot, but those didn't sprout, only the middle one did. And I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to use in like tea or anything like that. And then I also bought another sage plant because I wasn't sure if my cutting was going to take, and it's kind of turning yellow. I don't know if it's from overwatering or underwatering. This is calendula, which sprouted a long time ago but has barely grown. I can't seem to get the watering right on this one either. And people say that calendula is very easy to grow, but maybe I just have bad seeds, but I've not really had a lot of great success. And then here are my pepper sprouts. They are a kind of hot pepper. Both of them are two different kinds of hot peppers, and they've also been growing really slow. So really, I may just have issues with my soil. I have the same soil that I used last year, but I did freshen it up. Like I dumped all the pots out and refreshed them. So I'm not sure if it's deficient in something. I did add a layer of worm castings last week, and then it rained a lot. So I have noticed that they have grown a good bit since last week. Here are my pumpkin plants, which are grown from a store-bought pumpkin that I had from fall. I had them sitting kind of on my table as decoration, and then I cut it in half and actually buried it in the pot, and it has grown really well. And I did get a female flower, and I posted a video about pollinating that flower. So I have a little pumpkin, but the plant hasn't produced any more female flowers. It actually hasn't produced any flowers since then. And then this is the secondary one. So that pumpkin had so many sprouts, obviously all the seeds within the pumpkin, that I took one out and I put it in this pot. And it started off a lot slower because it didn't have that extra nutrients from the actual buried pumpkin, but it's starting to catch up. And I haven't seen any female flowers yet, but I'm keeping an eye, because if I do get another female flower, then I'll be able to pollinate that. These are my sweet potatoes. These 2 are slips that I planted, that I actually grew from a sweet potato. And this is a store-bought one, and the store-bought one started off growing kind of slow, but then it's caught up a lot and it's really starting to spread. The ones that I grew are not really growing as fast. This one has gotten bigger. This one still is kind of staying the same size. And then the other 2 new additions are wormwood and lamb's ear. And lamb's ear is called that because it's super soft, like a lamb's ear, and it has been used as bandages and as toilet paper because it's so soft and it has astringent properties. So during the Civil War, it was used as bandages because it helps stop bleeding. Don't know how I'm going to test that out, but it's also really pretty, and it has gotten a lot bigger since I first planted it. And then wormwood is called that because it helps remove intestinal parasites. So I need to learn how to actually use this, and it's starting to flower, which I'm looking forward to see what the flowers look like, or maybe it has berries. But it also is starting to look kind of scraggly, and I don't know if it's a watering thing or because all of these plants don't mind drought, but you have to balance not watering it and overwatering it, which is my constant struggle. But I have some medicinal books that I really want to get and learn how to use the plants that I have for their purpose, like drying the mint and lemon balm and oregano, and then using it for the purposes that it can be used for in addition to cooking. And I really hope my chamomile grows as well, and calendula. But if the calendula doesn't, then I may end up just buying some already established plants. And I really hope I get some pumpkins. And then here are my aloe plants. I brought them in for the winter, and then I brought them outside once the weather got warm enough, which was in May, which is about the time I put them outside last year. And I think they have grown even a little bit since May, and they're starting to grow babies again. So this one actually has a folded up baby. There we go. Oh, there's one. I gave away a lot of the babies that I had last year. I did keep some of them, but just like with all my other plants, sometimes it's hard to get the new ones established. Like I have one on the porch that's that got kind of sunburnt because it spent all its life indoors basically, and then all of a sudden I put it outside and it was too much. So, but I also want to start using the aloe, but I'm kind of just afraid to cut off the leaves and actually use it. That's mainly my fear, is messing them up once I cut off the leaves.